evening, dear readers and viewers. Thank you for being here with us for a new interview dedicated to a museum that is worth visiting. Liberace Garage is a museum of the Liberace Foundation for the Performing and Creative Arts. One of the greatest TV stars of all time, the American pianist Liberace was so extravagantly successful that he became the highest paid entertainer in the world in the 1950s and early 1960s. Although Liberace died in 1987, he wasn't actively performing in his last years. The younger generation probably has no idea who he was, but today Liberace is named in the lyrics of hundreds of pop and hip-hop music. He will be forever attached to Las Vegas, known as Mr. Showmanship, a legend in his own time, owner of the world's most opulent male wardrobe, collector of fur, pianos, gems, cars, antiques, and real estate. Today, French Quarter magazine meets with Liberace Foundation's chairman, Jonathan Warren, to talk about the new exhibit, Ultimate Influencer, and the enduring appeal and legacy of Liberace. Bonjour, Chairman Jonathan Warren. Tell us about the conception of ultimate influencer, witness the impact of Liberace on pop culture.
The thing that astounds people the most when they see Liberace's collections, when presented thoroughly, is his influence on other performers, other stars, and on show business itself, and all the various aspects of it. He's tremendously influential on all aspects, and it comes as a shock often to people, and it's heavily influenced in his collection. So that's what we seek to show here.
Can you give us some example of influence?
Sure. The first thing that catches people's eyes when they walk into Liberace garages, of course, is cars. Liberace was the first to take a car on stage in 1958. It was a Mercedes-Benz. It was because of a Mercedes-Benz convention in Las Vegas. They asked him to take a car on stage at the Riviera Hotel. He did. It was his birthday, so he stuck a big birthday cake on the hood and he filled the thing with showgirls. And it was a huge hit. And I think he liked the dynamic. He liked the energy that it gave to have a car pull on stage, and a very fancy car. And he continued with that, and he did more and more of that on his own. He brought the most outrageous cars in history onto stage, especially at Radio City Music Hall in New York and at the Hilton Hotel in Las Vegas. So that whole genre came from Liberace, but likewise, bling came from Liberace. He creates it for his costumes, but also for those cars, which are extensions of his costumes. And he creates it also for other things in his life, his houses and so forth. But he actually, the very look that we call bling is created by Liberace and his glazer, a guy named John Hancock, who creates this heavily adorned, mirror-tiled, and crystal-covered accoutrement for everything from cars to pianos to houses.
So the Ultimate Influencer exhibition, it's not only showcasing the jewelries of Liberace collection.
Right. A lot of people are already aware of his influence on in jewelry design. We've exhibited before with other purveyors in that business, such as Jason at Beverly Hills, who deal in that same genre of heavy bling and sports celebrity jewelry, hip-hop jewelry. Liberace is seen as the harbinger of hip-hop jewelry, which is why his jewels were exhibited at the Paris Museum of Modern Art in 2017 for 6 months as a part of Bijou et Tabou, their exhibit that year. So his influence there is quite well known. We do want to show the jewels, but we're also wanting to make people aware of the other ways he was influential in everything from television to stage to costume design, and all sorts of other aspects of show business and showmanship.
Coming back to the jewelry of Liberace collection, how did you think of a retrospective exhibition showcasing his jewelries?
The old Liberace Museum had his jewels on display just about all the time. I don't think it was very well contextualized. The jewels have a lot of mysteries to them. Nearly every piece is unsigned, and that's despite the fact that some of these rings are 750 or even 1,500 hours of workmanship. And they're of an expertise that is rare to this day in the jewelry field. So it's a bit of a mystery who created them. No less than 20 jewelers claim to have done that with me. None of them can tell me the finer aspects of the interior of these jewels, so none of them are the ones that did. They're of design types that fall into the genre of some very famous designers, including Andrew Grima and some others. The
amethyst, the real amethyst.
The royal amethyst, certainly.
Can you tell us about
the royal
this
amethyst?
piece?
People like to say it was given to him by Queen Elizabeth. He never said that. He said it was presented to him when he performed his royal command performance for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. So it was given to him at that point, or presented to him, as he says, at that point. The story is that all of his jewels, just about all of his jewels, were gifts, and nearly all of them were high-profile gifts, sometimes contract-related, sometimes not. This one's a mystery, but the look of it certainly appears to be Grima at the time, and there is a symbol inside it that does appear to be a partial of a signature of Grima, but Grima's signatures are very prolific on his jewelry, so when he wants you to know it's him, he makes sure you know. And in this case, somebody left this a big mystery and just threw us a few little clues. We don't want to let too much out of the bag. We don't tell a lot of people what is exactly on the inside of the ring because we don't want somebody to fake that they designed it. But we're still investigating, and it certainly has the look of a Grima piece, as does one of his other pieces, the South African ring, which is these two rings have they're very unique in design. There's no two sides that are the same measurement. There's no right angles anywhere on them. They're very angular, very esoteric, and of a rare design at the time, except for Grima.
Could you tell us about the pieces from Australia?
Liberace toured Australia 3 times, and he loved to do so. And he had some proteges there as well that he took to the stage who did very well, and he was a huge hit in Australia. And there are 2 rings that he obtained on those trips. One is a white opal with several diamonds. The other is a black opal with many diamonds. And they're both tremendously huge rings that he wore quite often. And he, he's often asked, how do you play the piano with those massive rings on? He'd say, very well, thank you. But those are 2 of the rings that people are referring to when they ask that question. The famous photo by Liberace of Liberace's hands on his chest, where he's got his hands in the ruffles, he's got all of his rings on. He's got these rings on, and very famous pieces that we have on exhibit here.
You told us about the giant pinky one.
The giant pinky ring?
Yes. What is the story behind this piece?
He found the stone, which is a 451 carat blue topaz, and one of the aspects of Liberace's jewels, he liked to find semi-precious stones that were so clear and so large that they were more rare than precious stones. And he would utilize these in his pieces, and this ring is the perfect example of that. This 451 carat stone is amazing, and it's this giant stone. He created the design around it and had it made. It's the only one where he said that he had made to his design, and because he liked the stone. and it's also the biggest ring. It's just a massive, massive ring that he wore, yes, as a pinky ring.
So we have a beautiful display here at the Liberace garage. We are not going to talk all about the jewelries because we want the visitors, our readers. Yes, come and see them. But I have another question. Your sources these pieces from all over the world, and how long did it take to put the exhibition together?
The exhibition, as far as the pieces, it's not new. The decision to do it here is a little different because we don't keep the jewels here. So when we exhibit them, we bring them in and we bring them out, and we have to bring in security and everything to do that. But we have them come in for the day and leave, and so it's a little more difficult. So we only have a few days a week where we have them on exhibit. But otherwise, it's something that we've done before. And we'll continue to do again. The jewels, anytime we have a museum that's interested, we love to exhibit with other museums. We love to partner up with even commercial situations that make sense, that are reminiscent of the history of Liberace. For instance, Swarovski was a big supplier of Liberace, so were other companies that would make sense to partner with in different kinds of exhibits. Names, a lot of brand names that are in his collection. Otherwise, also including such brands as Rolls-Royce are pretty prolific in the Liberace collection. So.
Yeah, the first two cars that we actually see when we enter the exhibition are spectacular Rolls-Royce.
Yes.
What were the best and most challenging things about creating this exhibition?
The most challenging thing is definitely it's difficult to deal with jewels, just because of the security aspect. Jewels are never worth what people think they are. They're worth more to us than they are to anybody because we own the brand. But if you owned these jewels and you were not the Liberace Foundation, there's not much you could do with them. You can't go advertise his name without our approval. So it's not that valuable to anybody other than us. The jewels themselves, by virtue of the stones in them and so forth, that's not what the value is. The value is the provenance. The value is the not only who owned them, but when and who designed them, which is a mystery, and the timing and the history, the amount of time on stage and on the camera that gives them their cachet, that doesn't necessarily exist if it's not connected to the Liberace estate. So it's not as valuable to others as it would be to us, but it still is always a target for theft, and so we have to be very careful. You can never insure them for what they're worth to us. It's impossible for us to collect in the amount of insurance that would be equal to what they can get us in earnings. So we have to be very careful with that. That's the toughest part for sure. It's not insurmountable, but it's
That's the reason you have this jewelry exhibition only on Fridays and Saturdays.
Right. So we do it a few days a week. We're able to do it more if the demand is there, but we're starting with the Friday and Saturday, and we'll go from there. And to your other question, what's most enjoyable about it is the surprise people have. It's always been that way. It's fun to see how people realize, even people who've never heard of Liberace, when they come through here, they tend to realize how influential he was on the things that they are familiar with and do admire, and the stars that they follow. They realize the influence he was on many of them. Sometimes they realize only when they come in here that who Liberace was, although they may have heard his name many times.
Finally, what do you hope a visitor take away from Ultimate Influencer exhibition?
The fact that the idea of the influencer is not new, and that it was created by this guy from West Allis, Wisconsin, who became famous because he looked into the camera on his television show in 1952. He was the first to do that. This is the era when they said, "Don't look at the camera." They told him, "You play to the studio audience, not the camera. Pretend the camera's not there." Liberace realized the camera represented a much bigger audience, so he played to the camera instead of the studio audience. People at home felt like he could see them, and it caused them to get dressed to watch television. It was a sea change. It made him world famous. He said without television he never would have gotten there. But it wasn't just television, it was how he played into the television. It was the way he made you feel like you were communicating back with him like it was a two-way conversation, which is exactly what influencers and all these stars try and do, using all of social media now. So it begins with Liberace, the same guy who does the first full-length music video, the same guy who takes the first car on stage. This is where it begins, is with Liberace, and if you come through this collection, you can't help but see that.
Thank you again, Chairman Jonathan Warren, for this valuable information, and we hope to come back again, and myself too, and
my pleasure.
with some other friends from French Quarter magazine and readers.
Absolutely, and it's my pleasure, and please do.